India and Russia are all set to bolster their economic ties as President Putin arrives in New Delhi on a state visit tomorrow. This will be Putin's first official trip to India since the war in Ukraine began in February 2022. The two-day visit is scheduled to begin with a private dinner on Thursday at Prime Minister Modi's residence. The leaders are likely to discuss a free trade agreement which will be signed in the future. So what does New Delhi want from Moscow? First on the agenda is boosting exports of pharmaceutical, agriculture, textile products to Russia. India is also looking for stable fertilizer supplies from Russia along with higher exports. The two nations are also likely to sign an MOU on migration to enable mobility of skilled workers and boost connectivity. Non-tariff barriers, regulatory impediments, defense co-development and export of defense equipment are also likely to be discussed. Remember, trade between India and Russia stood at $69 billion in FY25, with India importing $64 billion worth of goods and services. We're now joined by Vasabjit Banerjee, Assistant Professor at University of Tennessee, Sumit Ritolia, Lead Research Analyst at Kpler, and we'll also be joined by Vladimir Sotnikov, International Affairs Expert, in a short while from now. Vasabjit, Putin is coming straight off after meeting Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. What do you think his priorities will be from this visit? He's coming with a large ministerial delegation of 7 ministers and also the central bank governor of Russia.
Trade, trade, and trade. The war is slowly moving towards an end, and President Putin wants to revive the Russian economy, as he is the president, and that's his central job. And so there are effectively 3 or 4 things that are important to him. First, energy trade, which, as you know, makes up the bulk right now since 2022 between India and Russia. India's become one of India's largest suppliers of petroleum. India is under a lot of tariff pressure from the United States, EU, UK, so on and so forth, to reduce the consumption. And so there is some push to negotiate a better deal to make sure that relationship continues. Undergirded under the sort of the trade relationship, especially in energy, but also defense, I'll come to that in a second, is the payment system. Essentially, due to the sanctions, Russia cannot use SWIFT. So there is some sort of push to integrate India's rupee system with Russia's Mir system in order to bypass the dollar-dominated SWIFT system. So there's that's another thing. With defense, Russia wants to sell India some of the highest tech materials it has, including the Su-57, which Russia is offering India unprecedented co-production, not development, because India walked out of that because it was not up to the mark, but co-production opportunities, including transfers of technology. It is rumored that Russia might be also offering the Su-75 Checkmate, which is a low-cost competitor to a platform like Tejas, even though the 75 has not yet hit the market or is being produced in any numbers. Russia will also offer the more Su-400, which India seems to be eager to acquire because of its success in Operation Sindoor. However, Russia may be also offering the Su-500, which is a much more advanced system that can bring down including ballistic missiles. Finally, there is the trade corridors in Central Asia, and India wants the trade between India and Russia, other than defense, is basically in commodities such as fertilizers, such as petroleum. So India and in bulk goods, transportation costs matter a lot. Security of transportation matters a lot. So India is trying to bypass the unstable Mediterranean area through the Suez Canal and I'm sorry to take up more time, but it's really important because it goes through the land corridor from Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and India is going through that, and it bypasses the Suez Canal. And on the eastern side, India is also interested in opening up the Chennai-Vladivostok trade route. Vladivostok. And so Russia will, and that will also reduce the time by significantly from the Bombay to St. Petersburg trade route via the Suez Canal. So again, there are many things
That's very
that
important,
Russia wants.
Vasabjit, because India trying to secure supply chains, making sure that we are able to facilitate greater trade between those two countries. I'm going to come right back. Let me also get in Sumit Ritolia, lead refining analyst at Kpler. Sumit, we've seen high numbers in terms of India's import of Russian oil in November. Your own analysis says that it would be a 5-month high. It could also be in the range of 1.9 to 2 million barrels per day. Going forward, in December, imports of Russian oil have not stopped. What is the trajectory that you expect here onwards? And how do you think the two sides are going to discuss the energy partnership going forward?
We have seen around 1.85 million barrels per day of crude imports. I think highest since June 2025, and then since July we have seen new sanctions and issues popping up. But going forward, we see a dip because again, like Lukoil and Rosneft was the two major supplier for Indian to India for the Russian crude. But it's a matter of time as the supply chain reorganizes. So going forward, for the short term, we see a dip. Like India used to import around 1.7, 1.8. Our forecast or our analysis shows around a million barrels a day of Russian crude importing in December, January also. That again, there's a dip of around 700 to 800 kbd. But I think it's just a matter of time, like as the supply chain itself gets reorganized. We have also seen new export entities coming up that are supplying crudes to India, particularly Russian crudes, mostly based in UAE. Yeah.
All right. Sumit, before we go to our other guests, one quick question would be about whether the US can afford to go ahead and impose secondary sanctions on countries buying Russian oil. Will they try and put Russian oil out of the market completely? What will be the impact if they do it? And will United States move in that direction?
I think it's a $1 million question. Everyone is trying to understand that. Will US impose further secondary sanctions? But again, like it's more of a geopolitical now with if you also look at with as the other esteemed guest mentioned, like Russia had meeting with some representatives from Washington. So this inference that there are some peace talks or talks going towards peace finally is going on. So if that moves on the right direction, we might not see a major new secondary sanctions imposed on Indian refiners or new tariffs. And also, like personal view, I think this is the tariffs on India is more linked to trade deal with India rather than India importing Russian crude.
All right. Let me now go back to Vasabjit at this point. Vasabjit, you spoke about the fighter jet program. India has been rather tight-lipped about the defense cooperation, what exactly will be discussed ahead of this visit. Yes, the Russians are pushing for the Su-57 fifth-generation fighter jet very strongly. They're offering complete transfer of technology, joint production, joint development for the future. They're saying we'll give you the best terms. There is already an HL line for the Su-30 aircraft, which can be upgraded according to sources in the government. Having said that, at what point do you believe India will take a decision on the fifth-generation fighter jet? For the moment, we're told that there is going to be no discussion on this. The Russian side may raise it, but we'll not make any commitments or suggestions.
Well, there is always with India and Russia, there's always two layers. There's the spoken layer, and then there is the deep understanding layer that's existed for decades. So it's important to understand that, because if you're talking about Su-57, there are also things about submarines that India rarely makes the news in India or abroad. So there's that. So given that situation, it's pretty apparent that India is going to move towards a fifth-generation fighter aircraft. India's Su-30 the facilities to manufacture and sustain the Su-30 would be quite compatible with the Su-57. And the major producer in India, HAL, has said that it looks forward to, representative has mentioned that it looks forward to manufacturing the Su-57. It will be quite easy for it to do so. That said, the question for this government in India is that this government is not interested in switching from one foreign supplier to another. It wants India to be self-sufficient. Atmanirbharta is the term. And so the question is, what does the Su-57 program do to the AMCA program and India's ambition to produce its own fifth-generation jet? However, this Su-57 situation is also sort of important to understand, is also key to creating a nuclear or maintaining a nuclear triad, because the Su-30 is capable of delivering nuclear weapons. The others are, like, for example, the Jaguar is still, but it's a gravity bomb rather than sort of a targeted precision bomb. So the Su-57 will also be key to in maintaining India's nuclear triad affordably. And the Su-57 is already in production in small numbers. And most importantly, perhaps, there is a hint, and I don't know about the details of this, that Russia would allow India to essentially open a second or third production line that then would be used for exports to third countries, which would really be a paradigmatic shift in India's manufacturing capability for aeronautics.
All right. Let me also get in our other guest right now. We have been discussing various facets of the India-Russia partnership. Remember, there is a major business delegation also traveling with President Putin, and there will be discussions that will take place at Hyderabad House on how to expand the trade partnership, and also discussions on the trade agreement, the FTA agreement between India and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Zone as well. Let me now go across to Dr. Vladimir Sotnikov, who's joining us on the phone now because of poor connectivity. Dr. Vladimir, thank you very much for joining us. In terms of trade, India has been saying that there is a major trade deficit, which Russia now must correct. Do you think Russia will now open its market, give greater market access to Indian agriculture, pharmaceutical, textiles, Indian shrimp as well during this visit? Are we going to see some announcements on that front?
Yes, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to your program. Yes, I think definitely yes, the answer, because it was announced, actually. It was announced that Russia will open at large the internal market of Russian Federation to Indian goods, pharmaceuticals, goods of general demand, and other goods. And you know why? Because Russian leadership regards the Indian market and Indian goods and trade between Russia and India as a good example of cooperation and a barrier to sanctions, because more sanctions will follow. There is no doubt about that from the Western countries. So there are only two countries, giant countries, to which Russia can have unlimited trade. This is China and, of course, India. So I think that really, yes, that Russian markets will be open for Indian goods, for Indian pharmaceuticals. And moreover, I think most probably Russia will start to set up joint ventures. You remember that in the 90s, joint ventures were very popular in Russia. So I think that now the time is coming back, and now this time to get joint ventures with Indian companies.
Dr. Vladimir, I would also like to ask you about the current context for the visit. Yes, it is the India-Russia annual summit, but at the same time, Putin is coming after meeting Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. He met them, and it has been said that the meetings were productive. You've seen how Ursula von der Leyen of European Union has said that they will stop buying Russian gas altogether. In the context of this, and at a time when there is a discussion on how to bring the war in Ukraine to an end, what is the kind of discussion that the president would like to have with Prime Minister Modi on the Russia-Ukraine war, and the kind of support or role that he would expect India to play?
Okay, this is, as your previous guest said, this is $1 million question. I think definitely that President Putin will be seeking Indian assistance, moral assistance, other assistance, in supporting Russia in dealing with this very hard Ukrainian question. And I think it seems to me that, as far as I remember, Prime Minister Modi of India actually in the recent past, suggested a peace plan to President Putin, or at least he was just safeguarding some notion when he was visiting Russia. I think it was last year, I think, when he was suggesting that there should be a peace settlement of the Ukraine crisis. So I think that this time President Putin most probably will be seeking Prime Minister Modi's assistance and consent on the negotiations with the United States, because President Putin understands that the only effort by Russia and the United States alone is not enough, because there are other stakeholders like India, like China, like countries of the Middle East, who are very much interested in dealing with this Ukrainian war and to bring it to stop. So I think that definitely this question will be debated during their personal meeting, one-to-one or eye-to-eye, whatever you can name it, but definitely this question will be discussed.
All right, let me now go across to Vasabjit once again. Vasabjit, one of the focus points during the visit is also the mobility agreement. India is signing a migration mobility agreement for legal movement of skilled professionals to Russia. Now, will this be important for India's IT sector? Are we also looking at movement of professionals such as those in construction, those in other utilities who may be needed in Russia for reconstruction purposes or to assist in infrastructure development?
Yes, I mean, I have no doubt that it would be important for both India and Russia. Russia needs such personnel, and India has an unemployment issue in India, and this sort of resolves both those issues. My question is to India is that where is it going in terms of sending skilled labor abroad? Because India has a trajectory of educating skilled labor and then sending it abroad. So because the Russians will be, even under these circumstances, be able to pay more than their Indian counterparts. Russian government-owned firms as well as private companies will be able to pay more. So this is a real question that India must answer about where it wants its skilled labor, because the question that arises in conversations with the industrialists, especially in the manufacturing sector, is a paucity of skilled labor. So that's up to India to answer.
All right, Vasabjit, Sumit Ritolia and Dr. Vladimir, thank you very much for joining us on this very comprehensive discussion, which is in a way a curtain raiser to the President Putin's visit to India. It's going to be a historic one, at least 10 deals on the table, that's what we are told. Let's see what are the big takeaways. We're taking a short break here on Global Lens, but when we return, we get you all the stories from around the world. Stay tuned.